With Armored Core 6 quickly approaching in 2023, there's no better time to make this video than now. So here it is, what I want from Armored Core 6. Keep in mind this is an opinionated video, and a lot of information has already come to light from an interview with Miyazaki himself and Yamamura, the game's developer. It's important to note Miyazaki had a huge role in guiding the early stages of development for Armored Core 6, and let's just say even though he's known for his work in Souls, he originally came in midway through the development of Armored Core Last Raven, and later directed Armored Core 4 and For Answer. I'll be quoting stuff here and there in the interview, and also just summing things up, so I would highly recommend that you read up on the interview yourself. I'll leave a link in the description. I have some talking points written down, but this is mostly going to be going off script. And I think the best way to start would be what has already been confirmed, and let me just say I'm really happy with how it's going so far. Firstly, what I don't want Armored Core to be. I don't want it to be a Souls-like. To be honest with you, Souls and Armored Core just don't share that many similarities. In Souls, you have a main focus on close-range melee combat, with the addition of finite amount of spells, and in Armored Core it's mainly ranged weaponry. It could be close range with machine gun and shotguns, or medium range with things like rifles, or long distance with things like sniper cannons, but the main emphasis has always been on ranged weapons. There are melee weapons in the game, but usually they're a lot harder to land hits with and do a lot more damage. And I mean, things like Estus flasks and bonfires just don't exist in the Armored Core universe. Sometimes you'll have these stations where you can refill your ammo and health a little bit, but trust me, it's pretty rare coming across those. And thankfully it's been confirmed that this is not going to be a Souls-like game. In the interview, IGN asked, is it fair to say Armored Core 6 will be closer to the Soulsborne games than the series has been in the past? Miyazaki responds, no. We've not been making a conscious effort to try and direct it towards more Soulsborne type gameplay. First of all, let me just make that clear. IGN then asked Yamamura, you were lead designer of Sekiro. Can you talk a little bit about the lessons you learned from the project and how you're applying them in Armored Core? Yamamura responds, there are no elements directly referring to Sekiro. He then goes on to say it might be like Sekiro when it comes to the essence of battle, with aggression, speed change, and action-oriented fighting. At this point it starts to sound like there's some sort of counter stamina system like in Sekiro. So IGN asks, so it sounds like you're incorporating some kind of counter mechanic to Armored Core 6, maybe similar to what was in Sekiro. Yamamura responds, rather than calling it a counter mechanic, what we want to stress is the reason to continue attacking and continue on the offensive. What he's mainly trying to say is the flow of combat. He wants it to be really aggressive, kind of like in the spirit of Sekiro. I don't think he was referring to a stamina bar itself or anything like that nature. It definitely comes off sounding confusing, but I think it was more meant to be the aggressive nature of the game. So from what I was able to take from this, it's not going to be a Souls-like, and I don't think it'll have any aspects of Sekiro in it either, which I'm very happy about. Moving on, I do not want the game to be open world. The reasons are simple. The more open world you make the game, the less detailed it can be. Not to mention the amount of time that goes into traversing the landscape. And by the sound of it, it's not going to be open world. IGN asks, the moment in the trailer where there's a mech looking out over in the horizons, and it was wearing what looks like a backpack, does that confirm that this game will be an open world exploration with mecha? Yamamura responds, to be clear, AC6 will feature a mission-based structure to the single player. It's not fully open, it's going to stick with that mission-based structure. Summarizing what he says after that, he pretty much said the mech in the trailer is nothing more than just for cinematics. So once again, I'm extremely happy to hear that. Moving on, I don't want it to be multiplayer focused like Armored Core 5 was. Now, not to say I don't want it to be multiplayer, and not to say I don't want there to be big 4v4 battles or anything like that. What I'm saying is I want the game to also have a very structured campaign, and it's confirmed that that's what we're gonna get. IGN asks, how much can you tell me about Armored Core 6 multiplayer? Yamamura responds, yes, we do plan to have a versus mode similar to previous Armored Core titles. where you'll be able to customize your mech and take that fully customized mech into battle with others. But we will reveal more details about this at a later date. The main focus in AC6, on the story mode at least, is having the story develop and play out. We've concentrated on single player for the story. What this pretty much means is there's going to be a dedicated story mode, which is awesome. Now unfortunately it sounds like this story mode might not be cooperative. And honestly, what I'd like from Armored Core 6 is to have a two-person co-op mode, where if you play offline you can build your own mech and program an AI to help you, or if you're playing online you can be able to hire a player, or possibly hire one of the many ACs in the game. I would have also liked to see some sort of invasion mechanic, and when I say that I don't really mean an invasion mechanic. I think what would be cool is if a player could take over enemy ACs that you're fighting in the story, at least if you're playing with another player online. But unfortunately it doesn't look like we're gonna get anything like that. But yeah, I am very happy that they're focusing on the story a lot in this game. Armored Core 5 was like 90% about the multiplayer, so I'm pretty happy. Another thing that I'd really like to see is a focus on bosses, such as arms forts or the giant MTs from the previous games. Things like Spirit of Motherwill, the Great Wall, the giant flying MT from Armored Core 3, and the giant underground MT that's reappeared in a lot of the Armored Core games. These are some of the most memorable points in Armored Core for me, the bosses. And for the most part it looks like that's what we're going to be getting. This is a quote from Yamamura. "Boss battles are the highlight of the game in this title." And now I'm going to discuss on how I want the game to play like. I'd like it to be a mix between 3rd gen and 4th gen. Mainly I want to see a return of Primal Armor, and from the trailer that's what we got, so I'm happy with that. And also I want there to be quick boosting, but not like how it is in 4th gen. See, with 4th gen you can just spam the shit out of quick boosting, and it was turned more in just to something you constantly do for mobility. What I would like is to see it on something like a 5-second timer, and mainly have it used for things like dodging missiles and powerful attacks and getting back in cover, things like that. Now when it comes to the speed of the game, I'm personally fine if it's fast like Armored Core for Answer was, but I do think they'd be better off slowing it down like in Gen 1, 2, and 3. I think this is going to be the best outcome for everyone. The people in Armored Core 5 will still be happy. The thing about having a huge amount of speed is that it's really easy just to run up on an enemy or flank them from behind. It would be nice to see the game focus more on distancing and placement. That way people from the older generations will be happy and the people from 5th gen will be happy. I really do think it would be a smarter option basing it off Gen 1, 2, and 3. I do want to see a return of flying, but I don't think it would be smart for them to introduce infinite flight like what was in Armored Core 4 and For Answer. And this would once again make the older generation happy and Generation 5 happy. And it would give more use to certain weapons like grenade launchers, because they have a big AoE and it's best to shoot whenever someone's on the ground. And I think it would just be a lot easier balancing the game around that. And I also think it would help with some of the boss fights depending on how complex they make them. I also want to see the return of orbital cores from 3rd gen. Pretty much for anyone that doesn't know, instead of overboosting, you could use a core that had orbital cores, and whenever you activate it, it would automatically fire shots at your opponent. It was exclusive only to the 3rd generation, and I'm not really sure why it got removed. I'd like to see it come back. And something else I want to see that comes from 4th gen is I want to start with Human Plus natively. I think the stun mechanic that they put in place for back cannons was well made, and I think it was properly balanced. And thankfully this could possibly be confirmed in the trailer. And not just that, but I think it's also been confirmed in the interview. This is a quote from Yamamura. "We have various weapons for various ranges and various encounters, both in the two hands," which I don't think he's referring to two-handed weapons, I think he's referring to weapons in both hands. And then he goes on to say, "and on the back as well for missiles and cannons and things like that." So I'm pretty sure right there that confirms that there's going to be back cannons. And judging by the trailer, you're still going to be able to use a regular weapon in your back slot too, like Armored Core 5. So I think we really just got the best of both worlds here. Next up is customization. Half of Armored Core is all about building your mech, so I'd like to see a lot of parts right from the start, and I personally would like to see the return of every weapon type from the previous Armored Core games. This includes things like linear guns from the 3rd gen that were really good at staggering enemies and overheating them. Maybe now they can work it out so that it does more primal armor damage. I'd also like to see a return of railguns from 3rd gen and 4th gen. So in 3rd gen they were energy guns that you'd have to charge up, and in 4th gen they worked more like energy-based snipers. I'd like to see them both return. There's also just been a lot of one-off weapons in the Armored Core series. Like I remember in the PS1 games there was this mine dispenser, and it really sucked. It'd be cool to see if they could get some use out of it. Another thing is the missiles that launch overhead on top of your opponent and rain down explosives, and I would like to see the return of some of the more popular missions in the Armored Core series. For example, in Armored Core 1 and 2 where you had to guard the train from an enemy AC, and I already mentioned the giant MT in the tunnel, and just seeing some iconic areas return from the original games would be cool. Just a little something to put a smile on every Armored Core veteran's face. I also want to see a fully fleshed out arena like the previous games, and I want there to be a very large variety of maps, and preferably maps from the previous games. I know that's a lot to ask, we'll see what we get, and for the story I'd like it to be branching paths like it was in Armored Core Last Raven or Armored Core For Answer, preferably like how it was in Last Raven. The thing is, every little decision that you made in Last Raven would drastically change where you're gonna go next for missions, and I really like that concept. I would like the endings themselves to have a lot more variety. I know in Last Raven you kinda ended up at the same place, saving the day, just different variations of that. I'd like to see something truly different through the different endings. Also, back on the topic of the arena, I would like the opponent to have the home field advantage. So for example, a build that uses something like a sniper could use a big open map. And next up is the weird shit that I want. This isn't really a big deal, it's just personal preferences for me. I want to see the return of iconic parts from previous games. For example, it'd be really cool to fully recreate 9-Ball from the Armored Core 1, and Stinger from Project Phantasma, and the mech from the intro in Armored Core 2. Just a lot of the most iconic parts I want to see in this game, and at the very least there needs to be a lot of parts. In a mecha game that's half about customization, there just needs to be a lot of parts. Now if these AC parts came in as reskins that had the stats of other parts, I personally wouldn't mind. And of course I want to see the return of weapons like the Karasawa, Moonlight Blade. I mean, I'm pretty sure those are going to be in the game, they usually always are. But I'd like to see reskins of those weapons too, so for example every single Karasawa that ever came out since Armored Core 1. I would just love to see an HD remastered version of the Karasawa from the PS1 and PS2 games. Same thing goes for the Moonlight, and something that's weird that I want is manufacturer's colors for weapons. In the older Armored Core games, you could not change the color of your weapons. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to change them, but I do want there to be a factory base color. That way we kinda know what the weapon's originally supposed to look like. I don't know, that's probably something small that only I care about. And next up I want to talk about one of the most important parts, the multiplayer. Now as I said, I think this game would really profit from going for like Gen 3, and keeping that slower pace would be really beneficial for people that liked Armored Core 5 and the older veterans. I think it'd be much easier to have a battle line, and I think the game would play out better if it was more focused on proper spacing. And that being said, I would love to see huge scale battles like 4v4 battles on big maps. But for me specifically, I want there to be a 1v1 and a 2v2 arena, with tons of maps at that to play on. I think maybe for the 4v4, something that would be cool is if they had like refill stations that you can only access if you destroyed an enemy AC, or possibly balance the game around these huge fights and give weapons a lot of ammo. But yeah, I definitely want a 1v1. But most importantly for multiplayer and also single player is parts need to be balanced on release. Now unfortunately, with how Elden Ring turned out with its balancing, I don't think it's going to be very balanced for the first few months, mainly because Armored Core has a lot more customization than Elden Ring. There's just a lot more variables to the parts. So I hope FromSoft has some sort of beta test, even if it's a closed beta test, but they really need to do some testing. And it'd be nice if they could monitor online fights. That way they know the numbers and statistics so that they can properly nerf or buff certain weapons. Now, to jump totally off topic, another thing that I would really like is for them to have legendary weapons, and for those to be more powerful than usual weapons. When I say that, I mean things like the Karasawa, the Moonlight Blade, things like Zanata's Python. And yeah, that thing was totally shitty in Armored Core Last Raven, but it would make a really cool legendary weapon. Things like 9Ball's Pulse Pistol, that would be really cool to see as a legendary weapon. And I think a way to balance this out would be only let a player have one of these equipped at a time, or possibly do something where if you have one of these weapons equipped in a certain arm slot, you can't use a back weapon. It's only that main weapon that you chose. And I think another thing that would be really cool, but it's just totally way out there, would be only being able to equip 2 out of 3 overpowered features, which overpowered features would be Orbital Cores, Quick Boosting, and Human Plus. And you're only allowed to pick 2 out of the 3. I think that would be a really interesting mechanic. Of course, that's just way out there. Like, there's no way that's gonna happen, but it'd be pretty sick. And I think that covers just about everything. So yeah, pretty much Armored Core 3 with a lot of the Armored Core 4th gen mechanics. The biggest question now is there going to be flight, or are we going to get what we got with Armored Core 5 where you're going to be jumping off of buildings? I think that's the biggest question, and I don't think we'll really find that out until we see some gameplay footage. I mean, the next biggest question is the multiplayer. I hope they have large-scale battles and small-scale battles, 1v1s, and just please be balanced. But yeah, thanks for watching the video. A little bit of news, I'm going on vacation here pretty soon. So unfortunately, this channel is going to be dead for a little bit. The next video is probably going to come out towards the end of January, and it's going to be the series overview of Armored Core 4th gen. And once I get back, I'm just going to work on grinding that video out, because I know that video needs to be made. And I mean, yeah, if we get some news on Armored Core 6 while I'm away, I'd like to make a video on that too when I return. That would probably come before the series overview just because it's so much easier to make. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys at the end of January.